the privilege of introducing Lawrence Cortillon. He is the Director of Communications for Disability Rights Education and Defense Foundation in Berkeley. In 2012, he created and co-hosted the Projected Image, A History of Disability in Film, and that is a monthly-long festival on Turner Classic Movies, which reached 87 million people. That's a lot. He has been a producer, talk show host, and a modern dancer, according to him. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Lawrence Cortillon.
Hi everybody, you gotta bear with me. I gotta take a memory home with me too. So in 30 seconds, Connor and I are gonna turn around. And when Connor and I turn around, we're gonna take a selfie. You're gonna be in the back of that selfie, right? So I want you to show everybody that this picture is going out to on social media. What a great time you're having at YLF. Can you do that? Alright, so if you can stand, stand. If you can holler. Don't throw stuff, that'll make a mess. And let's see what we can do. Alright, ready? 1, 2, 3. Alright, thank you, Connor. So, hello! I said hello! That's a little better. How you doing, YLF? You having a good time? You learning a lot? Yeah? Alright, what's your favorite thing you've done so far? Eat? Somebody over there said eat. What else? Sleep? Did you have fun? Did you meet with elected officials? You hanging with each other? Alright, yeah? Learning from each other? This is my... Now, I'm not an alumni. This is the first event I've officially done with YLF. Hopefully not the last. It's an honor for me as sort of, relatively speaking, kind of an old dude. To be here and see what's shaking out in Sacramento and what's happening as a result of the Catherine Kelly Barrett luncheon. I had a chance to talk with some of you earlier as we were having lunch, and it's interesting. So I just turned, just a couple months ago, 52. Now I know 52 seems like a gazillion years old, right? To some of you. But the good thing about being the kind of old dude is that you get the benefit of looking back. And the benefit of looking back means you have the benefit of hindsight, right? Of learning from the past. And hindsight, it's an amazing thing, is always 20/20. It's crystal clear through time. Now, what may not seem crystal clear at the time that you begin the journey may look very different 6 months later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later. But the important thing, the most important thing, is that you put yourself out there, is that you take a chance, is that you grasp whatever opportunities present themselves to you. And some of them might not look like opportunities at the time. They may not be what you want, what you were after, but opportunities, they will present themselves nonetheless. And it's what you do with those opportunities that is the most important. Now, as Connor said, and sort of intoned about. I've done a lot of different things. And folks have joked through time when they've had to introduce me for this, that, and the other, because my work is media work. Most of my work is sort of in the public eye, right? So I have to think about what message it is that I want to present, how people are likely to accept that message, or maybe even interpret that message, what the landmines might be in the middle of that, right? If I say it this way, is it going to rebound back on me? Are people going to misunderstand it? Right? So can you say things in a way that people can receive the message that you receive? And what are the ways that we can do that a little better? Stay for a minute. Go along with me on this little bit of a journey. Now, you've been here for a few days, and you've had some opportunities to meet with each other, to talk with each other, to learn from each other. Have you ever noticed in your lives, right? I'm talking specifically to the delegates now, old and new, how people will bend over backwards and do everything, like contort themselves like some kind of circus performer to not say the word disability. Have you noticed that? Have you encountered that in your life at all? So what are some of the things they say instead? Throw some things at me. Differently abled. Who said that? Okay, differently abled. Now think about this. Differently abled. Now what could that mean, right? So does that mean you can juggle while riding a unicycle? Like, that would be differently abled, right? That would be something that's pretty unique, that not everybody can do, right? But they're a little afraid, right? Because what are we told about disability growing up? What are the things that, the messages that we receive, whether we want to or not, right? Those things that maybe our teachers would say, preachers might say, family members might say. Who in your lives, right, before coming here, right, before getting to YLF, right, how many people in your life talk to you about disability pride? Hands? Was that a common thing? So we got one there. Right? Not a very common thing. Is that something you've thought about since you've been here? Yeah? What feels better? Which feels better to you? Right? Often those lessons that we can learn, those messages that we can hear, come from somebody who's been there, who's had a similar journey, who's learned the things that we might be learning now at some point previously. So, a couple of years back, one of the things that Connor didn't mention is I, too, am an alumni or a refugee in sorts from Washington, D.C. I lived most recently in Washington, D.C. for 6 years. I was what they call in government the public affairs specialist for the National Council on Disability, NCD. Now, NCD, for those of you who don't know, is the federal agency, an independent federal agency, that the Americans with Disabilities Act came out of, right? So next year will be the 30th anniversary of when the ADA was passed. So I had this government job. Now, I didn't expect to have a government job. I never dreamed of having a government job. It sort of landed in my lap. I had my radio show in New York City. It was called The Largest Minority. I had some co-hosts, T.K. Small, Brendan Costello, Alejandro Espina. And we all produced this show, right? So I would have people on the show, and some folks that I'd had on the show, it was all about disability, culture, community. So I had some people on that had served on the National Council on Disability. And the way you got on there was you were either appointed by the President of the United States or these days a member of Congress. So I had some folks on the show to talk about disability policy issues, and they had their guy who had been there 25 years who was retiring. And so they said, you do this media stuff, what would you think about applying for the job? And I thought, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I applied for the job, went in, did my interview, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, life, as it does, will sometimes surprise you. They offered me the job. So I thought, oh, what do I do now? My nation has called me to serve, so I guess I better move. I guess I better go from New York City, where I had a radio show. I had the Disabilities Network of New York City, which is a nonprofit organization and advocacy group that I worked my way up from the community coordinator to the director of advocacy to the executive director. And I had a film series that I was doing there. And so it was like, oh, a whole new change in my life, a whole new direction, something I couldn't have planned for, never dreamt of. Boom, here I am. I bring all that up because there I was working in the federal government, not planning to ever work in the federal government. And a few years in, I went in at around 2011. So 2011, this was around 2016 or so. The president at that time, a guy you might have heard of named Barack Obama. Yeah, a real president. Wait, did I say that? Use your inside voice, Lawrence. We worked with the White House to help them make a speech that happens every year called the State of the Union as accessible as possible. So we worked with the coordinators, people like Maria Town who was at the White House, and we did everything that anybody could do to make this streaming version of that speech on the website as accessible as humanly possible, right? So we played around with fonts and sound and all these different things. I knew that there was a lot of work. I wasn't directly involved, but I was sort of on the periphery of all that, and I was aware of what was going on to make sure that people with disabilities could take part. So like our non-disabled friends, family members, partners, you name it, we could enjoy that speech, we could watch that speech, we could take part in that speech. So I was proud of that. It was the biggest effort that I think we'd ever seen in terms of getting the word out from the White House to the disability community. And at the end of the speech, I bring it up because at the end of the speech, the president starts listing groups, communities, people that he was fighting for. So he mentions the LGBT community, he mentions Latinos, Latinx, he mentions, different age groups, he mentions genders. So I'm like, it's finally gonna happen, it's finally gonna happen, because I knew all the work that everybody had done. And he went through this whole long list, right, of all these different groups and all these communities, plural, that they were considering and they were thinking about. And at the end of the speech, disability wasn't included. So here's a guy I admired, still admire, respected, kind of, came to the administration because of their work, and I thought, man, we're left out. Why are we left out? What is it going to take for people to include disability, right? So I just wrote this thing. I was just kind of in a rant, social media will do this to you. And so I sort of ranted and raved on out, and I said, what's it going to take? I always have to be invisible and to do this work. And so I kind of ran, and I just said, have you seen this meme? Maybe you've seen this meme on the internet that says, see the person, not the disability. Have you seen this thing? Have you heard this before? Yes. See the person, not the disability. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because if you see the person, not the disability, then you're not paying attention to the discrimination. You're not paying attention to the lack of access. You're not paying attention to the disparity in opportunity or in pay. So to see the person, not the disability, is to only get half the picture. The smart way of approaching it, right? The comprehensive way, the holistic view, is to see both. Right? Would we say, this is 2016, but would we say in 2016, would we say in 2019, see the person, not the gender? No. That's a good thing, right? Because if you said, see the person, not the gender, people would jump on you. They would call you out. Whoa, wait! I'm proud of who I am, right? Would we say, see the person, not the ethnicity or not the race? Would we say that? Would we erase the experience of people of color in the United States when we're talking about intersectionality? Right? That means if you see the person, not the race, not the gender, then you're not paying attention to the obstacles that they face. Or the experiences that they've had that are unique to them. Right? Sometimes those experiences that bring people together, that bring communities, plural, together. And so it's impossible, really, to see the person, not the disability. So what I did is I wrote this thing, I ranted and raved, I had a little fit on the internet, and I said, if you see the person, not the disability, you're only getting half the picture. Broaden your perspective. You might be surprised by everything you've missed. Disabled, all in capital letters. Hashtag, say the word. I got it out of my system. It's like a little hissy fit. It's like, all right, not happy about it, gonna go to bed, sleep it off, get back to work. Later that week, I wake up, right? I get up in the morning, click onto the computer, check the email. People are writing about disability in Australia with the hashtag, say the word. People are writing about it in Wales, hashtag, say the word. Right? Disabled, say the word. Say the word. Newsflash, disability is not a four-letter word. Right? D-I-S-A-B-I-L. Okay. So you're allowed to say it, right? It's not a slur. It's not a curse word, right? It's not, anything that should offend anybody. But we've been taught throughout time that we should be ashamed. We've been taught that we should be silent, that we should be happy for what they give us. Right, for the table scraps. That if you're really, you want to be included, you want to get a seat at the table, disabled person, differently abled person, handy-capable person. That always sounded like a kitchen utensil to me. Like, it slices, it dices, it makes julie and fries. The handy-capable, it goes in 1995. Capable, what is that? But in the end of the day, what all those silly words kind of share is that they're a way to get you to distance yourself. They're a way to get you to step back, to not be a part of something bigger, to not connect with other people. And what happens when disabled people connect with each other? Stuff gets shook up. Disabled don't play around, right? We don't have time. We don't have energy. We got stuff to do, right? 1935, right? The Work Progress Administration, New York City. The president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was a wheelchair user. They had these get-to-work programs. People with disabilities got a PH stamp for physically handicapped, and were not allowed to get jobs through those programs, weren't offered jobs, were shut out of those opportunities. So people with disabilities, they're hanging out, talking to each other, saying, why don't we get jobs like everybody else? Now wait, there's me, and there's you, and there's you, and there's you. When we all get together, so they hold a protest. They occupy the office. 1935. Right? That's what happens. They got those rules changed. In time, it took years. Right? It took years, but they banded together and they got it changed. 1977. Just 3 years after the president had signed what was called Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And they hadn't written regulations yet. Right? So there was no way to enforce this law. They passed the law, they didn't write regs, there was no guidance to enforce that law. So people with disabilities put together demonstrations in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Boston, in San Francisco, California, just down the road. People went in to have a meeting with Joseph Califano, who was the head of the office out there, and they refused to leave until he heard them out, until those regulations were signed. They didn't leave that building until 24 days later. The longest occupation of a federal building in U.S. history. U.S. history! Right? So, yeah, that deserves a woo! Woo! Alright, so did you get that in your history book? No. Did you get that in your social studies class?
Yes.
Who did? Who did? Alright, we got to shake hands when we're done here. Because you're the only one. And I think 15 years of me giving speeches and somebody said yes. So I got to find out who your teacher was. Right? More of us should know about that. Right? More of us should be, there's a thing, right? How many of you heard, again, shake, rattle, and roll, wiggle, wave your hand, give me a hoot or a holler. How many of you have been used to hearing disabled people referred to as being inspiring? Everybody's like, oh, I heard that. Now, do you like that? No. Why don't you like that? Why does that bug you?
Degrading.
Why is it degrading?
Because we're not inspirational.
It gives us lower expectations.
Lower expectations, right? Here's the thing. Here's the thing about inspiration, right? I like to play with words. I'm a word guy. Inspiration, right? Means that you feel, if you wake up the word makes the most sense when you're compelled to do something. Inspiration, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means you're compelled, fired up, ready to rock and roll, to get something done, to change it, right? So if you're looking at the actual word, inspiration, what it requires to matter is perspiration. In order to mean something, you gotta roll up your sleeves. You gotta sweat a little bit. You gotta make an effort. You gotta come together. You gotta change something, right? So if we use the word, here's the thing about inspiration. Nobody wants to be inspirational by default, right? Getting out of bed in the morning, not really a big achievement, right? Not necessarily inspirational, right? If you're going to school, you got a job, you got a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, you're just living your life, right? You're in the grocery store getting your six-pack. Oh wait, not yet, you're going. A few years. You're in the grocery store getting your chips, right? And somebody sees you and they're like, yo, you're inspirational, you inspire me. Like, well, I'm just getting corn chips, dude. I always like to turn that back. I always like to flip that around and say, oh, great. So I've inspired you to do what? Right? And I go, So that's what inspiration means. You feel compelled to do something. Great. I'm glad I've inspired you. What are you going to do? Do something. Right? So inspiration without perspiration is aspiration. which is another way of saying hot air, right? Just blowing a lot of hot air, right? It's not a feeling in your stomach. That could be indigestion. That could be heartburn, right? It could be a lot of different things. But in order to matter, it takes work. So I put this thing out, and it will fit on the internet. Next thing I know, people have picked it up. People I didn't know. People I'll probably never meet. Halfway around the world. And they're saying it's important to them. I didn't come up with this. People had written about this before. What I did was I turned it into a hashtag. What I did was I captured a moment. I gave it a hook. I gave it a focal point. I gave it something that people could latch on to, right? That they could then, wasn't up to me. You put it out in the world, you don't know, they make it their own. Here's the amazing thing, right, that I think is probably generational. When I was growing up in the dark ages, back in the 1970s, we were taught that the important thing for us to do was to be normal. Normal. What does that mean? Right? Average. Why would I want to do that? Like, what possible benefit could there be in lowering my standards? You can do more. Do more. You have a responsibility to do more. You have an obligation to do more. What you need is the opportunity to do more. And what I found in talking to people, because it's been over 3 years now, that thing still has a life of its own. National Public Radio called me. They wanted to do a whole big interview about it, and one of the things that came up in there was, I think this occurred, those protests that I mentioned, the WPA, the HHS, 504 sit-ins, the ADA, 1990, right? People travel around the country organizing, rallying, doing demonstrations. Eventually they crawled up the stairs, hopped out of their wheelchairs and crawled up the stairs of the US Capitol. In time, because of their collective action, because if one person would have crawled up the stairs, they just went, oh, that person's a little off. You get a few hundred doing it. Folks pay attention, right? So you get a few going up, crawling up together, joining together, and you find that those who grew up, it's been 30 years now, under the ADA didn't feel shame. The shame I was expected to feel. They had no need to distance themselves from anything, right? Because the way that we were taught to talk about it is you would say, I'm a person with a disability, right? And that's kind of like saying, I'm a person with a little bucket. And I can leave that little bucket behind, right? See the person, not the bucket, right? But can you separate yourself from your disability? Do you bring your disability with you everywhere you go? So don't let them make you feel ashamed. Don't let them project their nonsense, their fear, onto you. Your life is your life. Your community is your community. What you learn, what you give back, is up to you. And every one of those people who tries to tell you need to be distant are the same people that tell you that you need to be quiet. They're the same people that tell you that you need to behave. They're the same people that tell you you need to fit in. And I'd say, what's the point of that? Why settle for that? When together, we can do so much more. You know, to be seen for who we are in our own right is a common desire for everyone. Here's the amazing thing that kind of kicks me in the head, right? Earlier I talked about how I recently had a birthday, and I was a poster kid when I was 5. I went on, I did my work, I had my life. I didn't do disability work again. Wasn't compelled to do disability work again because I'd seen the news, and I'd seen that people with disabilities had fought climbing stairs and passed the ADA, and in my mind, I thought that that was done, that the work was done, that they had done it. And now I could enjoy the fruits of that labor. But I saw this movie, and at the end of the movie, this person who had become quadriplegic, a movie called $1 Million Baby, was put down, was killed by her caregiver, kind of like her father figure. And he talks about, you know, putting down his old dog earlier in the movie. And what got me, what lit that fire under my behind, was at the end of that movie, everybody else in the audience, it seemed like everybody else in the audience, applauded. Which signaled to me that to them, killing a disabled person, while regrettable, while sad, was understandable. Right? Yeah, we don't like it, it's sad, it's horrible, but hey, you're quadriplegic, what else should you do? And then, in there, something shifted. Something changed, and I said, oh, I got mad. I said, no, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I can't do what they expect of me anymore, because what they expect of me isn't making the world a better place. So I took a career, a job that I built for 17 years, and I shifted, and I changed, and I put my focus into doing disability advocacy work. Right? Got a job in a disability rights organization, worked my way up through that organization, and in that, at the ripe old age of 35, I found community. I found my friends. I found my family. I found my people. I found my folks that I didn't have to explain my experiences to because they'd been there too. The details might have been a little different. They knew what it was like. And we could band together, and we could get ticked off together, and we could climb those stairs together, and we could laugh and joke together because we understood each other. And we could lean on each other, grow from each other, become more than what we were and who we were separately. So when I think about disability, I want you to remember one thing. In addition to knowing that disability is not a dirty word, right? Also know that disability puts the D in diversity. It's not an afterthought. It's not the thing that you mention after people like me get ticked off and call you out on social media. It's right there at the front of the word D-I-V-E-R. It's D, right? So disability puts the D in diversity, and it's part of that overall tapestry. Then I ask you, what are you going to do to show up? What are you going to do to support your fellow activists? What are you going to do to help somebody along who's in a different spot in that journey than you are? Right? How many of you got help, whether you wanted it or not, got help from somebody to get you here? See your hand? Right? Almost everybody, right? As the old song goes, we get by with a little help from our friends.
You have a very rare disability.
So,
I do.
here's my challenge. Here's what I request of you. The world isn't going to have your viewpoint. The world may not understand you. There are going to be those who may not agree with you. That's okay. If you keep trying, you keep putting it out there, you come to YLF, you'll find those who do. Take strength in that. Let that be your support. Let them buoy you up and lift you up, and buoy up and uplift other people. Every day, in every way, however you can. So think of who helped you get here and pay it forward. You know, if they don't know, show them. Tell them. Fire them up. Be the inspiration, right? By doing something. And by doing what burns in your belly, right? That little voice that tells you how to move forward. That's where the strength comes from. So, as you go out into the world, as you apply everything you've learned here this week, don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Don't be quiet. Live it. Learn it. Earn it. Own it. Be disabled. Say the word. Thank you.
Nelly from Group 3, can you join us?
We gonna get a picture of them? You wanna talk? Am I out of the way now? Can I get out of the way? Not yet?
I'm Melanie, I'm from Group Blue. I wanted to give you a thank you for your wonderful speech.
What was your favorite part?
All of it. It made me have an open mind. It gave me different perspectives. It made me feel like how do I say this? It made me feel like I should take your challenge that you did, that you said. Sorry. So, thank you.
The Catherine Kelly Baird YLF Networking Luncheon is just one small part of our week-long program. The delegates are engaging in leadership development, skill building, creating independent living skills, creating education and career goals while here, and learning about critical disability-related resources that will help them when they return to their communities.